Hello to all my wonderful hookers out there. It is that time, and that time is for another Right Hook results show. And this time we have the Ace of Hearts tournament, which was a 1,000-word writing contest. And we are starting over in the gold bracket. But before I get started, I will say that in this contest there was one point deduction of -5 for a word count violation, which is the first time we have had to enforce that. We have a maximum penalty of -5, so just to be transparent, I'm telling you that was given out. But I will also tell you that it did not affect the eventual result. And with that said, I will also say that there were 3 buys in the gold bracket, and those stories went from the quarterfinals to the semifinals, and those stories were A New Direction, The Patron Saint of Strangers, and Accounting for Empty Bowls. And with all that said, let's get started. We are in the quarterfinals of the gold bracket, where we only have one contest in the quarterfinal, and that is Speaking for the Country versus the Golden Arrow. And the first judge scores this one for Speaking for the Country. The second judge scores this for the Golden Arrow. And I should mention that we only have 3 judges for this one, so the next judge decides the winner. And the third and final judge scored this one for Speaking for the Country. Speaking for the Country wins the match and advances on to the semi-finals to take on A New Direction. Over now to the championship bracket, where we have 2 buys in the quarterfinals, and those buys are Every Dish Tells a Tale and The Sugar Kings, both stories advancing on to the semi-finals. But we are staying in the quarterfinals for now, where we have our first match, which is Going to the Source versus The Golden Calf, and this one had 3 judges. The first judge scored it for Going to the Source, and judges 2 and 3 scored it for The Golden Calf. The Golden Calf wins with 2 votes to 1 and advances on to the semi-finals to take on Every Dish Tells a Tale. The next contest was Where Astronauts Eat versus The Stranger, and both judges of this contest scored it for The Stranger. The Stranger advances on to the semi-finals to take on The Sugar Kings. Back now over to the gold bracket, where we have A New Direction versus Speaking for the Country, and this one had 3 judges. The first judge scored it for A New Direction. The second judge scored it for Speaking for the Country. And the third and final judge scored it to our winner, advancing on to the final, Speaking for the Country. Leaving us with just one more match in the semi-finals of the gold bracket, and that match was The Patron Saint of Strangers versus Accounting for Empty Bowls. This one had 3 judges, and all 3 judges scored it to the winner, and advancing on to the finals, The Patron Saint of Strangers. It advances on to the finals to take on Speaking for the Country. Back now over to the championship bracket, where we are in the semi-finals, and the first semi-final contest is Every Dish Tells a Tale versus the Golden Calf, and this one had 2 judges. The first judge scored it for Every Dish Tells a Tale, and the second judge scored it for the Golden Calf, giving us a voting tie of 1 vote to 1. And when we have a voting tie, we move on to the cumulative totals of the judges' scores added up together. And when we do that, we get another tie. So both stories scored 68 points each, 68 to 68, with the judges' scores added up together. So when that happens, we move on to the categories. And in the categories, we eventually have a winner. The first category is Prompt Adherence. And with the judges' scores added up together, with a score of 9 points to 8, Every Dish Tells a Tale, advancing on to the final after a very close-fought match. The other semi-final match in the championship bracket was The Stranger versus The Sugar Kings, and this one had 3 judges. The first judge scored it for The Stranger. The second judge scored it for The Sugar Kings. And the third and deciding judge scored it for The Stranger. The Stranger advances on to the finals to take on Every Dish Tells a Tale. Back now over to the gold bracket, where we are in the finals, and the final is Speaking for the Country versus the Patron Saint of Strangers. And this one had 6 judges. The first judge scored it for Speaking for the Country. The second judge scored it for the Patron Saint of Strangers. The third judge scored it for Speaking for the Country. The fourth judge scored it for the patron saint of strangers. The fifth judge scored it for the patron saint of strangers. And the sixth and final judge scored it for the patron saint of strangers. Meaning that with a vote of 4-2, the winner of the gold bracket and taking home the prize of €200, The Patron Saint of Strangers by Victor Cabinta. Congratulations on winning the prize of €200. Back now over to the championship final, where we have Every Dish Tells a Tale versus The Stranger. And this one had 5 judges. The first judge scored it for Every Dish Tells a Tale. The second judge scored it for The Stranger. The third judge scored it for Every Dish Tells a Tale. The fourth judge scored it for The Stranger. And the fifth and final judge, with the deciding vote, scores it to our winner in the championship bracket and the new champion of the 1,000-word genre, The Stranger by Jamie Gill. Congratulations to you. You have just won €200 and are the champion of 1,000 words. And that concludes this week's contest. We hope you have enjoyed your time here with Right Hook. We are going to be taking a hiatus now, so there is no new contest to announce, but we hope to be back soon after a retool of the contest format. We will talk to you again after a while. The Stranger by Jamie Gill. Congratulations to you. You have just won €200 and are the champion of 1,000 words. And that concludes this week's contest. We hope you have enjoyed your time here with Right Hook. We are going to be taking a hiatus now, so there is no new contest to announce, but we hope to be back soon after a retool of the contest format. We will talk to you again after a while.